Hello YouTube and welcome to another Proxmox tutorial. So in this video I'm going to show you how to deploy an LXC container in Proxmox with Ansible. So are you ready? Let's get started. So as you have seen on my previous videos, we actually deployed a VM virtual machine and also LXC container in Proxmox with the help of Terraform. But in this video I'm going to show you how to do the same, but this time using Ansible. So Ansible is very famous. So if you don't know, Ansible is an open source command line IT automation software. Okay, it's actually written in Python. Okay, so it can do a lot of things, but it's mainly used to configure system, deploy software, orchestrate advanced workflows, and much more. Okay, but here I'm going to use it just for deploying our LXC container in Proxmox. Okay, so the prerequisites for to use this automation tool is just the system you want to apply it to it must have actually SSH, that's all, and of course Python. And the main actually things to note here, it's agentless. It's not like Puppet or Chef or Salt, which requires actually an agent to be installed on the remote machine in order to automate the tasks. Here Ansible is actually agentless. You don't have to install an agent on the remote server, for example, to orchestrate actually the tasks. Okay, so the first thing here, you have to install actually Ansible, but the installation is pretty simple. So let me go to, for example, DigitalOcean website to show you the command that you can use if you are under Linux in order to install it. So the first command here, as you can see, is just to add the official project PPA, okay, or personal package archiver. Then of course you have to update the repositories, and if you are running a Debian based distribution, all you have to do is to run apt install Ansible. It can also be installed on macOS, okay, using just the brew install Ansible, and it will install actually Ansible under your machine. And that's all. You have actually Ansible running. So let's return back to our Proxmox. So me here, I'm running actually Ubuntu version here, and I have already installed Ansible. And if you want to know which version of Ansible I'm using, you just type the command ansible -- version. So here, as you can see, I'm running Ansible core version 2.12.10. okay, so Ansible here I running in the Linux machine. And also you have to note, Ansible cannot be installed on the Windows. It only runs on Linux type machines and also on macOS. Okay, so now that is actually Ansible installed, we need a couple of very important files that we have to set up in order to work with it. So the first file is actually ansible.config file. Okay, so here I create a directory called Proxmox, and I already actually put the necessary file. So as I told you, you can actually use configuration file for Ansible. Okay, so let me show you this file. So here I'm using Vim, but you can use whatever editor you want. So ansible.config file or .cfg file. So this is the file that is actually read by Ansible before it runs what we call a playbook. So a playbook actually contains the task that you want to run on the remote server. Okay, so here actually I'll be executing this playbook against Proxmox itself, okay, in order to actually create a LXC container. Okay, so here you can add some defaults. The most important one is this directory here, inventory.hosts file. So here I'm specifying which file that will contain the host that I'll be running Ansible against. So here I'm running Ansible against actually Proxmox itself. So here I have to mention the host file, okay? And those other things are not actually very important or mandatory. The most one, which is not all actually mandatory, is the host file. So let me show you the content of this host file here. So let's use also Vim and let me show you the contents. So here I'm putting the host name of that we call here, what we call here a group actually. So here I have only one host under the group Proxmox, so you can name it whatever you want. So here I'm naming it Proxmox because I'm running Ansible against a Proxmox host. And here you have to give actually the IP address of our Proxmox, which is that 100.201, okay? And the Ansible connection is of course SSH, because we'll be actually SSH to our Proxmox in order to run the tasks. And of course we have here to put some credentials in order to connect to our Proxmox. So here the Ansible user is Aminos and Ansible password is this password here, okay? So those are the credentials in order to connect to our Proxmox using SSH. So this is the content of our host file, okay? So this is a very important file, and in order to test that, to test the connection between Ansible and your host that you will be actually running Ansible against, you can use the Ansible command -i, okay, and the host name or the host file actually. But me, I already put the host in inventory file, so I don't need to add here -i for the inventory file, but I can do that if you want. So host, then I will execute the first model that we actually execute in order to see if the connection is established between Ansible and your host. So here our host is Proxmox. So let's run the model -m, so m stands for model, and I will run just model ping in order to see if I can reach actually my Proxmox host. Here we go. So here actually I forget something. Yes, here actually I have also to put the name of the hosts. Okay, so the name, as you remember in our file, it's called Proxmox. So here you can put it Proxmox, then -m, then ping. Okay, here we go. So if you get everything success, it means that Ansible can actually reach your Proxmox host with SSH. So here the response of ping is pong. So let me just show you this Proxmox where it is on my host file. So I will just use cat hosts. Here we go. So you can see this Proxmox here is what I have put on the command line. You can also just do the same if you have many this is what we call groups. So here I have a group called Proxmox which has only one host, but you can also add some hosts. For example, let's say you have some CentOS machine, you can create a group named CentOS, and also you can add a group named Ubuntu, for example, which contains just a couple of IP addresses of all the servers that you want to run Ansible against. Okay, you can also use, instead of Proxmox, use the keyword all, which means all the groups that you have in your host file. And as I told you, as we have put inside ansible.cfg file, let me show you that, cat ansible.cfg file, we have put actually here this command inventory is our host file. We don't need to specify this -i hosts, so I can just run it like this, Ansible. Then here let's say that we have a lot of groups, we can just type Ansible all -m ping, and I will have the same result. Okay, so now that the connection is established or tested success against our Proxmox, so this is the IP address of the Proxmox server, I can run what we call a playbook. So as you have seen on this directory, I also put a YAML file called create-lxc.yaml, which contains all the necessary tasks that will be executed with Ansible in order to create actually a machine. So now let me show you the contents of this file called create-lxc.yaml, which is actually our playbook. So remember, a playbook contains the task that Ansible will execute in order to actually provision your LXC container. So let's see the content of this very important file, create-lxc.yaml, but you can call it whatever you want. So a lot of people call it main.yaml. For example, if you have only one playbook, you can call it main.yaml. So me, just for convention here, I will name it create-lxc. So this is our playbook. Here it's written in YAML, so you have to pay attention in indentation. That's why it's advisable to actually write your code here with a good code editor. So mainly you can use Vim if you want, but if you are, for example, in macOS or Windows, if you want to create this file, I would advise you to run it with Sublime Text, for example, or VS Code. So let me switch to my VS Code here just to show you this file in a better way. So this is the same file, but here it's open using VS Code. So VS Code has support to YAML files, but you can also go to extension and install the YAML extension here. Okay, so this is the YAML language support, or you can just also type Ansible and install the extension for Ansible. Okay, so let's return back to our file here. Here we go. So this is our create-lxc.yaml file. Okay, so every YAML file begins with 3 dots. This is a convention, but it's not mandatory. And then we begin with the name of this playbook. So you can call it whatever you want. Here I call this playbook create new LXC container. Here we specify the hosts. So as I told you, this is the name of my groups. So remember, in our let me switch back to the command line here. Inside the host file here, I put as group Proxmox. So you can here also name it whatever you want. So me, I name it Proxmox. So here you can also substitute that with the keyword all if you want, which means it will run against all your groups. Then the task. So here are the tasks that I want to execute. So here I have just only one task, so I name it create-lxc container. Okay, and inside this task I will execute a model. This is actually Ansible built-in model called Proxmox that will create the LXC container. Okay, and here are the different parameters for this model Proxmox. You can also Google that in the Ansible site, which gives you all the model or the built-in models in Ansible that you can use. So there are a lot of models that you can use. One of them is Proxmox, which allows you to create LXC container. And those are the different parameters for this model. So here, for example, you can specify the container ID. So here just I put 300, but you can put whatever number that you have. And also here you have to put actually the credentials. So for the credentials here I will use, for example, here Aminos, and also for the password I use the password if my memory is good, capital P password. Okay, so those the credentials in order to create actually the LXC container. So are the credentials that must have admin access to your Proxmox. Okay, and of course here I have to provide the Proxmox host name, so the IP address of the Proxmox in which the LXC will be created. Then the password for the container itself. So here I will call it here for the password I will just put Ansible.223, and the host name. So this is the host name for the LXC container. So I will just name it Ansible LXC, which means it has created using Ansible. Okay, and of course the node, you have to specify the name of your node. So if I return back to my Proxmox, you can see that my node is called Proxmox01. That's why I put here node Proxmox01. And of course here you can specify how many cores, how many CPUs that your LXC container must have. Okay, and very important thing for LXC container, you have to specify also the template. So here I will be using Ubuntu 20.04 template to create actually our container, and of course you have to provide the full path to this template. So here my storage name is named storage. So if I return back to Proxmox, you can see that my storage, the main storage, is also called storage, but in most cases you can see it's LVM or something like that for the default installation. Okay, and what else we have here? Here you have to provide the size of your disk. So here I will just give 8 gigabytes for the memory, 512 megabytes for the Nameserver. Actually I will just put the Google DNS. Okay, and for the IP address, you can give it IP address corresponding to your network. Here I will give it just 100.38/24, and of course for the gateway. So all these parameters are actually the one required in order to get your LXC. And if you remember, those parameters are the same if you want to create LXC container using the GUI. So when you create a LXC container using the GUI, you click on create container and you provide here the host name, the password, and so on, the template, the disks. So instead of going through the wizard, you can provision your LXC using this file here. Okay, so as you can see, it's pretty straightforward, pretty easy to have this file, so you can reuse it many times if you want, or if you can give it to someone else in order to create your LXC container. Okay, just one thing here to mention is you have to pay attention to the spaces and indentation. Okay, so now let's try to run this Ansible playbook in order to see if we get really this LXC container. So this is our Proxmox. So in order to run actually this container, it's pretty easy. Ansible, then you have to provide of course the name of your playbook. Okay, so here I am on the same directory where I put my playbook, and its name is create LXC, and the command to run this playbook is Ansible playbook. Then you have to provide the name, which is create LXC. Okay, so let's run it, and here we go. You can see it will run, it will gather some facts that we call some facts, and it will create actually the container. But here I have an error. Okay, maybe this user Aminos has not the right to create actually or to authenticate to our Proxmox server. Okay, just for simplicity, I will just use the root user here, which has all the permissions. So I have to modify the file. Okay, so let's go back to our Ansible directory here, and I will have to modify actually the host file. Here we go. So here I'll just use our root. Actually, okay, which has also the same password, our aminos. Okay, I guess now everything is okay. So let's test that. Okay, so I will just test with the ping command. Here we go. Everything is okay. So I have to change actually now the playbook and substitute the user aminos with root. So actually I know the problem. I didn't substitute these variables here, so I'll use root here, and for the password I'll use the one that I have provided. So actually that was the mistake that I have done. It was an error in this file here, so I guess now it will run. Just here I will here we go. So now let's run our Ansible playbook using this command, which will run actually our playbook. Here we go. So it's gathering facts, and if you take a look at your Proxmox, you can see that it has begun creating the 300 LXC container. Of course the name will be Ansible LXC. Okay, so you can see that we have two tasks which are okay, and actually this is the change that have been made. So let's run this container and verify if indeed actually it has as root password Ansible.2023. okay, so let's return back to Proxmox and let's run this LXC container. So let's test our credentials. Root Ansible.2023, and as you can see I am in. Let's also verify the IP address, which is, if my memory is good, .3.38. Here we go. So you can see that I have the IP address that I have set up on my playbook, and I have also connection to the internet. Okay, so with the help of this playbook that we have here, we have actually succeeded to create LXC container in Proxmox. Okay, so you can see how easy it is. You can actually create an LXC using Ansible. Of course here you have, for some security reasons, you have to substitute that these two actually credentials with are in plain text, which is security here breach. So normally we have another mechanism called Ansible Vault, where you put these two variables in another file, encrypted file, and you run your playbook. Okay, because in that way, if you want to distribute this playbook, you can do it. So that was just a brief introduction to Ansible, how to use it to automate tasks in Proxmox. As always, I hope it has been informative for you, and I want to thank you for viewing. Bye bye.